Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Testing Tricks. Today I would like to discuss top 9 scenario based manual testing questions. Okay, so first question would be, what would you do if there is a production defect after the post release? So first step, what you should do, discuss with the client and take the flow or take the steps from them and try to reproduce it in your lower environment. That means in QA environment, try to reproduce it. Okay, if it is reproducing, that means there is a miss from our side. Okay, now second step, create a new test case and add it to your test case repository. Okay, this particular flow you can create as a new test case and you can add it to your existing manual test case repository. Okay, third is, tell automation team to automate this particular workflow. Okay, then after that, again you can connect with the client or you can send an email to the client that yes, there is a miss from our side. So what are the steps we are taking nowadays, that we have already created a new test case so that we can check this particular workflow in the next release. Okay, and automation team also automated this particular workflow. So whenever we are going for the next release, then that time, before that, we'll check this particular workflow so that we can make sure that this particular workflow will work definitely. Okay, so these are the steps you have to follow. Okay, now coming to the next question, what will you do if you find any defect after code freeze? So first try to understand what is code freeze. So code freeze means, suppose today 25th Jan, so suppose after 1 week there is a release. Okay, so developer, they are saying that no, will not implement any code, will not develop any new code. This is the final build, and on this build if you want to test anything, you guys can test it, but from the development side will not do anything, will not implement any code. This is the code freeze state. That means they'll not do anything from the coding side. Okay, so now if you find any major defect within this 1 week of time, then obviously they have to fix it. Okay, but if you are not able to find any high priority high severity defect, in that case we'll discuss with the developer and also with the client that there is a code freeze state, but after this code freeze we got this kind of defect which are not high severity high priority, you can consider as a low priority defect, but it's a defect. So what you will do in this case, if client is saying no, no need to fix it, then they will not fix, and also they can fix it in the next release also. So because sometimes what will happen, by fixing this particular low priority defect, as release is nearby, there is a possibility it will break some other functionalities. So better not to take that much risk right now. Okay, as it is a low priority defect, we can consider in the next release, so we can defer this particular defect. Okay, but if there is a major defect or there is a critical defect, if you have found after a code freeze, in that case they have to fix it. Otherwise, testing team will not give a proper sign off. We can give conditional sign off in that case. Because it is a major defect, it is a critical defect, we will inform immediately to the client that no, before release it should fix it from the development team. Then only we'll give the proper sign off. Okay. But if it is a low priority defect, we can fix it in the next release. Okay. So that is the answer you should give. Coming to the next question, in which situation you will reject the build? Suppose today developer has released one new build and on that build you are performing smoke testing and sanity testing. Okay, and you have observed that your most of the basic functionalities are not working. Then in that case you can reject the build. That means it is a faulty build. So inform the development team to fix it and release a new build. On that build you guys will can perform, means manual testers and automation testers can perform the smoke and sanity testing. Okay, Coming to the next question, suppose you have a limited resources and release is nearby, but there are multiple test cases you have to execute, okay, and which is impossible to do, okay, and client is not expanding the release time, okay, they want on time release. In this situation, how would you achieve the target? Okay, so obviously, as most of the resources are not available and there are many test cases which you have to execute and which is also an impossible work, okay, so in that case you have to follow the risk based testing. So what you can do, suppose there are 30 test cases, 10 test cases you can consider, okay, which are consists of some critical functionality and some of the uh, basic functionalities, okay, so you can target those functionalities only, those flows, and you can execute. Obviously there is a risk because as you are not executing all 30 test cases, so what we are assuming that if this critical functionality works, then it is indirectly we can say that those basic functionality will also work, okay, and if you have a automation team, then tell automation team to execute regression suit and smoke suit so that you can check whether the existing functionality is working fine or not, and also some of the critical functionality we can also uh, check using automation execution, okay, if you have automation in your team. But if there are no automation in your project, so in that case what you can do, you have to follow this approach. Out of 30 you have to consider 10 critical functionality, and those functionality you can execute it. If it is working, then you can tell to the client we are assuming that those basic functionality also should work, okay, but there is a risk because we are not executing all the test cases. So that is the only one app on, that is only one approach and final approach you should follow, because you don't have much time, you don't have any resources, then you have to follow the risk based testing approach, okay. So this is the only one solution you have. Coming to the next question, what would you do if developer is not accepting the defect which you have raised, okay, so what you can do, reproduce it in front of him in QA environment. If they are not accepting, just showcase, okay, uh, that it is reproducible in QA environment, and this is the proof. You can also schedule a call with the developer and you can show that it is reproducible. If they are not accepting, then what you can do, tell to the developer, follow the same steps which I am doing in your dev environment, follow the same steps in dev environment. If it is reproducible, then obviously it is a defect, right, so they have to fix it. But the problem is if they are not able to reproduce the defect in dev environment, in that case obviously they cannot debug, they cannot uh, find the proper root cause, right, because they have to take the logs and all everything, right, whenever they can uh, find this kind of defect in dev environment, in that case they have to uh, do the proper analysis, then only they can give the resolution on that particular defect, right, but they are not able to reproduce it. It is reproducible only in QA environment, not in dev. So in that case what you will do, will uh, summarize entire thing in email, will capture the execution screenshot, will attach it and will inform to everyone, and also will keep um, stakeholder also in CC, so that we can tell to everyone that it is reproducible in QA but not in dev, but it is a defect, okay, we have to fix it, okay, so that is the steps we have to follow. And if it is reproducible in dev, then they have to fix it. Coming to the next question, when you will perform regression testing, so suppose you are working in fast sprint and you have a total 5 user story, you have already tested it, okay, now you are going to the next sprint. So whenever you are going to the next sprint, then there is a possibility, obviously some existing functionality might not work, or existing user story which you have already tested in sprint 1, it might not work. Okay, so then that time what you can do whenever you are performing executing the test cases in sprint 1, you have to identify 2 or 3 test cases as a regression test case. So what will happen whenever you are going to the sprint 2, then that time those new user story also come in that sprint. So you will execute those first, then also you have to execute those 2 or 3 regression test cases which is you have already identified from the sprint 1, so that you can check whether still existing functionalities are still working fine or not, which you have tested in sprint 1. So the best process is try to introduce regression testing from the sprint 2. Then whenever you are going to the sprint 3, then you can target sprint 1 and sprint 2 functionalities also. Okay, so that's why always try to identify 2 to 3 test cases from each sprint as a regression test case. Okay, now coming to the next question. When will introduce automation testing in your project? Obviously, if your stable is not, if your product is not stable, in that case you cannot introduce automation testing, right? Because if your product or application is not stable and you will try to automate those flow, and if you execute your automation part test case, result will give 0% result. Okay, it will not execute, it will fail, because your product is not stable, your environment is not up and running, you are not using proper test data. Then obviously if you are automating also, then your all the test cases will fail. So until or unless your product is not stabilized, you should not introduce automation. Okay, coming to the next question. When to stop testing? Practically testing is a never ending process, but at some point of time you have to stop testing, right? So some of the steps you have to follow. Okay, suppose you are not getting any major defects. Okay, second step is manual test cases are passing with 100% success rate. Whatever test cases you have written, you have executed, all are giving 100% pass result. Okay, your automation test cases are also passing continuously in every build. Okay, and also it is satisfying all the acceptance criteria and exit criteria, because whenever we are getting any user story or some backlog item, it has the acceptance criteria associated with that particular feature. So if it is satisfying all the acceptance criteria and also the exit criteria, and you are not finding any defects, and also your manual test case, automation test cases are giving 100% success rate, so in that case we can say, yeah, our product is stable, and also it's good to go for the release, and that time only you can stop the testing. Okay, now coming to the next question. What do you know about test plan? Okay, so test plan contains scope, suppose in scope and out of scope. They have already mentioned the login functionality and logout functionality is in scope, not other functionalities. Because if you'll try other functionalities, you'll get defect. But that is not our business, because that is out of scope feature. Okay, our main goal is we have to check only login and logout functionality, that is in scope. So we have to test this functionalities only in this release. Okay, so that one they will mention in that particular test plan document. Entry and exit criteria, when you will start the sprint and when you will exit the sprint. Okay, so those criteria also they will mention on that document. Okay, resource allocation, how many resources will be working in your project, how many manual testers, how many automation testers will work. Release time, you have to mention when you are going to release this particular project, that is also uh, you have to mention in test plan. Okay, tools, tools means suppose you are using manual test cases, you are writing manual test cases, where in which tool you are writing the test cases, or if you don't have any tools, then you have to write in excel sheet. So those things also you have to mention in the test plan. Okay, this is the initial agreement, the test plan is initial agreement is happening with the client. So this is the checklist, kind of a checklist you have to follow. Okay, so testing types, whether you are introducing functional testing or non-functional testing, so that one also it is mentioned in the test plan. If you're doing non-functional testing, means performance testing or stress testing, if you're performing, in that case which tool you are using. Okay, that one also it will be mentioned. Estimation, obviously you have to do the proper estimation, otherwise you cannot tell to the client that you will release after 4 months or after 1 year. When you will release, until or unless you will not do the proper estimation, right? Because based on that your budget will decide. Environment, in which environment will test, QA environment or production or stage. Okay, or QA people will be responsible only for QA environment, so that one also it was mentioned in test plan. Defect management, if you find any defect, where you will log it, in Jira or in Azure DevOps, where you will log it, that is also should be listed in the test plan. Post release activity or post release support, suppose developer suppose client got few defects after your release, then whether that support you will give or not, or if it is being provided our testing team, then how many resource will be available for that. Whether it will be one resource will give that support or 3 4 people will give that support. Okay, so entire things will be listed under test plan. Okay. Okay, so coming to the next question. Okay, so that's all from my side today. Hope you guys like it. Okay, thank you.